Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Asad Yaqub and I welcome you to my Ielts listening video. Listen guys, seriously. If you're looking for 8 band for Canadian immigration, in part 4 of Ielts listening, you need 8 to 9 correct answers. If you are looking for foreign studies, like you need 7 band for PLAB or any other thing, even then you need 7 to 8 correct answers in IELTS listening part 4 sorry. And if you want to get 6 band, so even then you need 5 to 6 correct answers here. So in this video, I will tell you, just check the duration of the video. In this video, I will tell you what is it that you need to focus to catch the right answer. In other words, I will give you the bait to catch the bird of the right answer. Okay, very simple. Now, first of all, we see one word only. Usually, IELTS listening part 4 is one word only. History of coffee. Wow, my favorite drink, but now I am fasting. Means I can't eat anything. It's the part of my religion. We observe fasts for 1 month, right? It started at around 4 o'clock and it will finish at around 6:45 today. So anyways, and I'm making all these videos without eating anything. It's been around 13 hours since I last ate my meal, okay? But I'm feeling energetic. History of coffee. I love coffee actually. So now they're going to tell us about history of coffee. Switch on your imagination, how coffee was made, produced, discovered and all that stuff. Then you can see there are 4 subheadings. Number 1, coffee in the Arab world. Actually, Arabs introduced coffee. Number 2, coffee arrives in Europe 17th century. Arrival of coffee. Number 3, coffee and European colonization. European colonies in coffee. And number 4, coffee in the 19th century. Right? Now, let's take a start. You don't need to read everything. They will give you 1 minute to read questions 31 to 40. Audio will not stop in the middle. Audio will continue. Audio will go on its own pace, right? So, they will give you 1 minute and in that 1 minute, you need to read carefully the statements or the options where there are the questions, but at the same time, you will overlook other bullet points as well. Let's see. 1522 coffee was approved, but there is no question. 1623 in audio they'll say in 1623 in Constantinople, right? The ruler ordered. Now for ruler they can use the word king, or in Constantinople the king of that time. So for ordered they will use the word demanded. Ordered something, demanded something, the dash of every coffee house. So he demanded the dash of every coffee house. So just focus the word demanded and you will find the answer. See that? And what is demanded? Demanded is the paraphrasing of ordered. For ruler they will use the name of the king or any other word like that. Okay? Now let's go on. Coffee arrives in Europe in 17th century. Coffee shops were compared to, very simple comparison of coffee shop. Now what you're going to focus? You will focus the word performed a similar function to. Whatever they say performed a similar function after to, that will be your answer. For example, coffee shops were compared to restaurants. For example, coffee shops were compared to restaurants. They'll say performed a similar function to restaurants. Something like that. Okay. So you will find it easily. Just focus the language I'm telling you. After that, question number 33. They played. They means coffee shops. They are talking about coffee shops. So they means coffee shops. Coffee shops played an important part in social and dash changes. 2 types of changes. Social and dash changes. So for that they can use the word important part. For important part they can say they had their origin, and for changes they will use the word movements, right? So if they say social and any other changes, so say social and dash movements. So whatever they say with movements, with social, before social or after social, that will be your answer. You can't miss it. It can be social and religious changes. So social and religious movements like that. Okay, coffee and European colonization. First bullet point has no question, so the audio will go on. Okay, now question number 34. Types of coffee were often named according to the dash they came from. It can be according to the city they came from, according to the area they came from, according to the continent they came from, according to the country they came from. Something like that. See, we do have any name, Americano, cappuccino, latte. Americano is the coffee. Yeah, and mocha is the coffee. Mocha is again the name of a place, right? So, types of coffee were often named according to the dash they came from. So, they can say taken from. The names were taken from the dash they were shipped. For came from, they can use the word shipped. For example, names were taken from the countries they were shipped. So, the answer will be countries. This is how you need to focus actually. Let's go on. After that, in Brazil, question number 35. In Brazil and the Caribbean, most cultivation depended on. Cultivation of coffee, as we are talking about coffee, it's understood. Cultivation of coffee depended on something. So, for that they can say workers there were almost all the workers were, or the cultivation of coffee fully depended on, or dash was the main source of cultivation of coffee, or something like that, right? Depended on what? Question number 36. In Java, coffee was used as a form of. Now, in Java, they used coffee for some other thing. For example, coffee was used as a form of money. That instead of money, they used coffee. Just listen carefully and you will find. And for used as a form of, they can use in the audio means or used as means of. For used as a form of, they can use used as means of currency, as means of something. 37. Coffee became almost as important as comparison of coffee with another commodity. Coffee became as important as tea. Coffee became as important as chocolate. It's going to be another commodity, so they're going to compare coffee with that. 38. The move towards the consumption of dash in Britain did not also take place in the USA. So there was the move of consuming something. As they are talking about coffee. So what is the competitor of coffee? Tea. Cold drink is not the competitor of coffee. Tea, herbal tea or whatever tea is the competitor. So the move towards the consumption of tea or coffee in Britain did not also take place in the US. By the way, coffee cannot be the answer. The word that is written or the main topic of the passage cannot be the answer. They don't make it this easy. Next. Coffee in the 19th century, the previous century. Prices dropped because of improvements in. Now the prices of coffee dropped because of improvements in. Now for improvements, they will talk about those improvements. For example, they say they had cheaper and more efficient systems of transportation. Cheaper and more efficient means improvements. So whatever they say, because of cheaper and more efficient transport system or any system, whatever they say, that is going to be the answer. Question number 40. Industrial workers found coffee helped them to work at. At means time of the day. Usually when you study at dash, you drink coffee. At night. Exactly. Okay, so when you are doing anything at night and you feel lazy, you drink coffee. So, industrial workers found coffee helped them to work at, it's the time of the day and usually it can be night, right? Now, listen, on a piece of paper like this, you can have a notepad, write down numbers 31 to 40. Okay, 31 to 40. This test is going to be in front of you on your screen. I will play the audio and you have to write down all the answers and keep in mind it's one word only. Once you finish listening test, at the end of that you will find answer key. Check your answers on your own honestly and then comment this video with the number of correct answers like 7 by 10, 8 by 10, 9 by 10, 10 by 10 and all that. I'll be waiting for your comments as well. I also teach IELTS online. If you want to join my online IELTS classes, My WhatsApp number is given. You can contact me for that. Let's take a start with IELTS listening, and target should be minimum 9 by 10. All the best. Take care.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
In my presentation, I'm going to talk about coffee and its importance both in economic and social terms. We think it was first drunk in the Arab world, but there's hardly any documentary evidence of it before the 1500s, although of course that doesn't mean that people didn't know about it before then. However, there is evidence that coffee was originally gathered from bushes growing wild in Ethiopia, in the northeast of Africa. In the early 16th century, it was being bought by traders, and gradually its use as a drink spread throughout the Middle East. It's also known that in 1522, in the Turkish city of Constantinople, which was the centre of the Ottoman Empire, the court physician approved its use as a medicine. By the mid-1500s, coffee bushes were being cultivated in the Yemen, and for the next 100 years, this region produced most of the coffee drunk in Africa and the Arab world. What's particularly interesting about coffee is its effect on social life. It was rarely drunk at home, but instead people went to coffee houses to drink it. These people, usually men, would meet to drink coffee and chat about issues of the day. But at the time, this chance to share ideas and opinions was seen as something that was potentially dangerous. And in 1623, the ruler of Constantinople demanded the destruction of all the coffee houses in the city, although after his death, many new ones opened, and coffee consumption continued. In the 17th century, coffee drinking spread to Europe, and here too, coffee shops became places where ordinary people, nearly always men, could meet to exchange ideas. Because of this, some people said that these places performed a similar function to universities. The opportunity they provided for people to meet together outside their own homes and to discuss the topics of the day had an enormous impact on social life, and many social movements and political developments had their origins in coffeehouse discussions. In the late 1600s, the Yemeni monopoly on coffee production broke down, and coffee production started to spread around the world, helped by European colonization. Europeans set up coffee plantations in Indonesia and the Caribbean, and production of coffee in the colonies skyrocketed. Different types of coffee were produced in different areas, and it's interesting that the names given to these different types, like mocha or Java coffee, were often taken from the port they were shipped to Europe from. But if you look at the labour system in the different colonies, there were some significant differences. In Brazil and the various Caribbean colonies, coffee was grown in huge plantations, and the workers there were almost all slaves. But this wasn't the same in all colonies. For example, in Java, which had been colonized by the Dutch, the peasants grew coffee and passed a proportion of this on to the Dutch, so it was used as a means of taxation. But whatever system was used, under the European powers of the 18th century, coffee production was very closely linked to colonization. Coffee was grown in ever-increasing quantities to satisfy the growing demand from Europe, and it became nearly as important as sugar production, which was grown under very similar conditions. However, coffee prices were not yet low enough for people to drink it regularly at home, so most coffee consumption still took place in public coffee houses, and it still remained something of a luxury item. In Britain, however, a new drink was introduced from China and started to become popular, gradually taking over from coffee, although at first it was so expensive that only the upper classes could afford it. This was tea, and by the late 1700s it was being widely drunk. However, when the USA gained independence from Britain in 1776, they identified this drink with Britain, and coffee remained the preferred drink in the USA, as it still is today. So, by the early 19th century, coffee was already being widely produced and consumed. But during this century, production boomed, and coffee prices started to fall. This was partly because new types of transportation had been developed, which were cheaper and more efficient. So now, working people could afford to buy coffee. It wasn't just a drink for the middle classes. And this was at a time when large parts of Europe were starting to work in industries. And sometimes this meant their work didn't stop when it got dark. They might have to continue throughout the night. So the use of coffee as a stimulant became important. It wasn't just a drink people drank in the morning for breakfast. There were also changes in cultivation.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.